Welcome aboard the DAC Dynasty channel, and this is DACMan Barry. First stop. So I want to talk about a few things. One is the media coverage, if you can call it that. There are a few things that were not correct, and I'm pretty sure I know the reason why, and that's because sensationalist news and seemingly anti-country sentiment is very popular in Romania in particular. So to correct things, the bus came on the 1st. It took a while to get through all of its inspections, all of the paperwork, and on the 16th was able to pick her up and drive off the port. So driving was slow because it's a city bus. We can't expect it to do 80 miles an hour. But everything was going okay until about an hour into the trip. We had a coolant line going to the heater core burst. It was a minor issue, and I probably could have driven because it was still cold outside, but I wanted to play it safe. And police were on the scene to protect us from being rear-ended from idiot drivers. So the tow truck was called, and we were towed less than a mile, and by chance we're dropped off right across the street from this shop that specializes in school buses. So they're able to bypass that hose, basically the heater core itself, which made things a little cold, amplified by the fact that those awesome Germans smashed one of my windows in port. But the bus was perfectly fine, drove it another 2 hours up until we got home without any other incident. But as I said, it's much more cool to talk about how this bus failed and didn't get to where it was supposed to go. Yes, it did, and my fault, let's call it, is that when I arrived, I didn't take any further pictures or videos because it was cold and dark already. Another issue is only one news article and one journalist contacted me, and that's Matei Melinte from Piatra Neamț, and he was the only one that spoke to me and asked permission to use any of the photos and comments I've made on social media. I find this a little troubling, not on a personal level, because honestly, I'm the type of person that I don't care. You can say whatever you want. That's your right. I believe in absolute free speech. But as a indicator of journalism and journalistic integrity, it's a little telling where you just copy and paste, throw something through a translator, and a poor one, I may add, and bam, you got yourself an article that advertisers are paying money to have their little ad on the side of this article. Now, if I was an advertiser, I'd have a problem with this, but if I was the reader, I'd have the bigger problem, because obviously you're not getting the real facts. You're getting something that is spun into a narrative that suits who knows what interest. I don't know. Maybe it's because they want to get rid of old buses in Romania and buy new ones. I'm not getting into that. What I'm getting into is, in this particular instance, they got it wrong, or they were deliberately vague. Back to the lighter aspects, or more pleasant aspects. As I was bringing in my bus on the 16th of November, another very interesting event was occurring. Yash bought one of the old trolley buses that Pietro announced retired, and their intent is to restore it as a static display. It is a shame that they no longer have their trolleybus network, so obviously this trolleybus will never drive again, or at least it's highly unlikely. But the sentiment that they want to keep one for posterity is admirable. And this is something that Matej Melinte from Pietro Nouns has covered in his article very nicely. This will cement November 16th as what I'm calling DAC Day, which includes any DAC buses, Rokar buses, Roman buses, and generally anything the factory that was called Autobuzul made. Now, obviously, the issue with buses is they're not cars. Duh. Yeah, I know. They're bigger, they're harder to work on, parts are much more scarce, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And I am hoping that, if anything, it'll make people look back at the past, not necessarily as endorsements of the systems back then, but just as a way of remembering that history, things that they've gone through, good or bad. Because lots of us that have ridden as passengers in these buses, we had some good memories in them too. That's not something we should forget, and I typically tend to live sometimes too much in the past. But that's a different story. Point is, there's a group in Bulgaria, and I will have the link to their site as well. They are passionate about these vehicles. They've already managed to pick up a DAC Chavdar 317 ETR trolley bus from, I think it's Pernik, if I'm pronouncing that right. Currently it's in Sofia waiting its repair and restoration. They have a Chavdar B14-20, which I find amusing because it's based on the same platform as the 117 UD DAC buses. In other words, it's just like mine, but with a trailer. And obviously has a what they call the aquarium body because of the large windows, much larger than the DAC's windows. And they're currently working on it. So obviously they managed to raise enough money to pay people to do this, to replace sheet metal, paint it, do chassis work. And there's also a museum in Kiev in Ukraine that has a Rokar 217E trolley bus. Now, I don't think that one functions, it might not be running, but it's there. And you have me, Al Barry, aka DACMan, with my DAC 112 UDM. Formerly owned Fitesh bus, ran until this year, and now it's in the US. I also have another DAC bus, although this one was already marketed as a Rokar, and it should be a 112 UDM. However, on the paperwork it's listed as a 112. I don't know if that was on purpose or just an oversight, but some of that might not matter to most people. What is interesting, it is a former Romavia bus, an airline that used to shuttle around high-level officials and military personnel. So this bus, I like to think and joke around that it's heard some really interesting conversations, and who knows what I'll find on the inside of it once I really start digging in. And then there's also a couple of other museums or attempted museums, which I'm not going to go into right now, but there is a push for this. So we have a nice little base, a nice little foundation to start a trend when it comes to these kinds of vehicles. Obviously in the US there's plenty of bus collectors and restorers. The UK is very big with this kind of things. You'll see there's many groups on Facebook, Twitter, online, forums, I think probably it's the one country where owning a classic bus is the most mainstream. So now you have Romania on the worldwide stage with classic bus representation. I'm going to wrap things up here for now, but there'll be more videos to come. I do want to thank again all those that have been a part of this, that have played a significant role, from Alex Vasile to the director of Transbus Fitești to Paul at Overseas Shipping, because let's face it, this was not a car being railroaded over. And thanks also to all the people that have contributed with help on paperwork, information, manuals, including those that have donated parts. So we reached the end of the line for today's route. This is DACMan Barry, wishing you a great ride.